Oof. Better. I was going to wait till it fades out, but because I got told off by Nicholas last week, but I couldn't be bothered. It was getting too long. So a little bit later than expected.
I thought it was on its way out completely, which I was going to cheer. Hooray!
So another Malt Travel podcast. This is episode 33. So we're a little bit late, which we might get to in a minute. But anyway, we're here now. So we're going to crack on. We're going to continue with our A to Z of pubs and pub crawls. And if you remember those that listened last time, we pulled out of the magic sack at the end the letters H, O, and V. So they're the ones that we are going to tackle this evening. Sorry, I've got some cackling women downstairs who are off to a wedding on Thursday night, which is a very strange thing. Must have been a hell of a discount, and it's in Leek. So, well, better stop there. Just while we're on the start bit here, there's a little other for those on the YouTube. There is a new podcast I I've come across. It's not new, actually. I'm still a bit on the fence because it's John Robbins and Ellis, whatever he's called, who are on Radio 5. And I must admit, I don't particularly like their show on the weekend when they do it, but they've started doing a Moon Underwater podcast.
It's on a Friday.
It's on a Friday. Yeah,
they do the Friday afternoon.
Ellis Johns, isn't it?
Ellis and Johns.
So they've been doing a Moon Underwater podcast where every week they get a guest to come in and they, as we did back in episode 2, they think about their perfect pub. So it's worth listening because it's on a theme. It's kind of growing on me. There's some Adrian Charles was really, really good when he did a really good one, and there's one or two other ones that have been really, really good. So worth a listen maybe if you're into pub podcasts. So the plan this week is, I say, we're going to do the letters H, O, and V. But good evening, gents. Are we okay?
Hello.
Well, eventually I found an internet signal around the house. I mean,
and we've got to blame Bruce because Bruce, we were all ready on Sunday to our normal recording, and we got a frantic message of Bruce saying he's taking his good lady wife out and the kids out for a Mother's Day meal, but they'd got to the Rose and Crown and found that they'd been bookings before and all turned up late, Bruce, and therefore you were stuck a bit, weren't you? So
the way it was mad, because the A64 there'd been a crash on. There was roadworks in town, so it was nobody's fault really. People arriving late. They were just miles behind. Took forever we got home. So I hate Mother's Day. We should just wait a week later.
I must admit, we went out on Saturday because daughter was in between shifts at the airport. So we went to quite a nice pub actually. I've never been there before. A place called Rollaston on Dove, which is just down the road from Burton on Trent. A very lovely little village, quite old pub that dates back to 16th century. The Spread Eagle. It was quite nice. It was a vintage inn. So I managed to use my M&B shareholder. So it was quite a nice afternoon actually. And beer actually was quite good. I was on the Dark Star Hophead, which you only see occasionally, but it's quite a nice beer. They had three others on as well, including Landlord, which is almost becoming a bit like the new Doom Bar, I've got to say. Certainly in the Midlands, it's quite there. So that's why
I took my mother to Wetherspoons in Northallerton.
Yeah,
White Hart, lovely, plenty of space in there.
Bruce was disgusted at that. Bruce was disgusted at that one.
She
loved it, enjoyed it, gobbled it down.
Now, Bruce has sent me a news clip. I haven't got through it in detail because I've got the news that we had for Sunday, really. But I know you sent me one, Bruce, where Mr. Martin is on about let me turn Buckingham Palace into a Wetherspoons.
Losing the Queen's Home to Windsor. Yeah, I mean, certainly clearly egotistical, isn't he, really? There's that article, he refers to himself in the third person, which is always the first sign of a nutcase, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you start referring to yourself in the third person, things are going south.
Save taxpayer a hell of a lot of money, though, if he took Buckingham Palace over.
Absolutely, yeah.
Queen loved all those sticky carpets and dog-eared copies of his propaganda magazine every time she for a poo to read. Yeah.
Anyway,
they've just taken on whole university. Their campus bar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because you'd sent me one. I think they're closing a pub as well, aren't they? I know we mentioned that where I work in St Helens, they've closed. There's two spoons and they've closed one. And I know I can't remember where that link you sent me, but they're closing.
One in Bury and one in Croydon today, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of think as beer prices go up, more people go to Wetherspoons. It's a bit weird, really, isn't it? Unless this whole place where he's got two, and he's maybe trying to consolidate everybody into one to drive his costs down.
And again, I think there might still be staff because the pubs I'm going to, every pub's got signs up saying we still need staff. Yeah. So now I'm going to come back to Wetherspoons because again, in another podcast I listened to, I must have had a nice easy week of work this week. No, I've been driving up. Actually, no, I haven't. I've been at work every day though. I've had to listen to a lot of podcasts on the motorway. Another one where they talked a little bit about Wetherspoons and the cheap beer. So I might come back to that in a minute. So it looks like then Nick's still having his tea. So I'm not quite sure he's got a beer with him tonight.
Hey, look at this. This is great for a prank. Don't you can quite see the colour of it. But it looks like meths. Look at the bottom of that glass. It's like a purpley colour. It just looks like a glass of meths.
What's
you
that?
You could have a great prank. Local Heron's got Old Jamaica grape soda on offer at the moment. But I've looked at the ingredients. There's actually no grapes in it whatsoever.
Yeah,
and as I say, it's like this bluey purple colour. And it just looks like you're drinking mess. So I might sit around outside on a street corner somewhere, supping out of a plastic bottle, and then people donate me money.
There's probably no point asking Bruce if he's got a beer in the glass yet.
I've heard him in Ben's bedroom to get a Chase Bell looking for an internet signal. So he's got a little booster by his skybox here. So it's bloody sky dreadful. I'm going to the pub later though. In fact, with all the haste, I forgot to ring my friend. I shall put myself on mute and do that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll have a beer for both of us then, and I'm back on my Thornbridge box, and I'm having a pigeon fancier, which is it's another collab they did with the Big Smoke Brewery, which are a brewery down in London. And in fact, I'll come back in a minute. I sat through the tastings actually this time last week when Thornbridge do their monthly box the Thursday after. They do like a tasting night, and so a little bit of information about the Big Smoke Brewery, which are quite interesting. So I'm going to crack that. It's an IPA. It's a bit strong. It's 6%, but I break up on holiday tomorrow, so I'm going to have a couple of beers tonight. So there we go. So beery highlights. Bruce is on the phone, so just I'll skip Bruce's bit and we'll talk Nick, because Nick, you in the lakes last weekend, weren't you? Just like a quick soiree.
Yeah, went across to the lakes on Saturday. Made a long day of it, so very busy. Really was busy, but we managed to get into one, two, three, four pubs. Well, 3 in the lakes, and then one dropped back in on Skipton on the way home. There's something to eat. You can guess where we went for something to eat.
You obviously got the great weather last weekend.
Yes, yeah. Now, I mean, that's obviously one reason why it was busy. I've never seen the queue for the boats in Bowness.
Yeah,
and the boats were like completely booked. It was just a mass of people.
So it looks like you got to Staveley, went to the Hawkshead Brewery Tap.
No, we did the other way. Right. Actually, we went up the A1 across the A66 to Penrith, and then carried on to Keswick. So my first beer was, did I have a beer in Keswick? No, I don't think I did. No, I didn't have a beer in, I had a pie in Keswick, had a nice pork pie from Thomason's Butchers, cracking butchers, that one is. So yeah, pork pie, overlooking Derwentwater. And then we stopped off at Rydal. Now, previous podcasts, people have heard me talk about Rydal Water. It's a great walk. Takes about 50 minutes right the way around the lake. Park at one side of the lake, and then on the homeward stretch as you're coming around the top of the lake, stopped off at the Glenrothy Hotel and the Badger Bar. So they always have decent real ale in there. So this time I was on the Cross Bay Brewing, the brewery in Morecambe, and I was on their Sunset, their Blonde. So that was a nice pint to start off with, and then finished the walk off, and then we dropped into Bowness. And went to Robinson's pub, talked about it before, dropped into the Albert. We could only find parking for an hour, so rather than have something to eat in there, I just had a quite what did they have? Pint of Dizzy Blonde in there, and then dropped into the Hawkshead Brewery, and that was very busy on the outside with the nice weather. Everybody was sat outside, but we managed to get a table inside, so I had a couple of beers in there. I did send you some pickies. So started on there. They had an IPI on, which was a New Zealand pale ale, and then I went a bit crafty. I went onto the Mosaic out of the.
I think that's a weird picture you've got on the screen there, where you're looking at a very almost like one of those banked up pints. I'll come back to in a minute.
I can't see myself, so I don't know if you pop that up or not.
I've got them on there. Yeah, they're
right.
Yeah, left to right. You've got the left picture is you in the Hawkshead tap. There's the middle one is you pork pie by the lake, and then I presume were you sat outside at
Badger Bar? Very nice. Yeah. The only problem with the Badger Bar is obviously that road that runs from Ambleside up to Keswick. It's quite a busy road, but it was nice just out of the front there. And did
you visit the toilets in the Badger Bar and the?
Not this time, no.
The rock face. Oh,
no, because I only had a pint, and we were 2/3 of the way through the walk. So from there, just walked back to the car park, and then drove through Ambleside. It was too busy to stop anywhere there, and dropped into Bowness.
Okay, and in terms of Bruce, you mentioned to us last time that you were spending a week working in Selby. So I know you sent me a couple of bits and pieces about Selby, so including some very famous sausage curry, apparently, which again, for those on YouTube, is on the screen right now.
Yeah, so sausage curries have got an infamous history in Selby. There was a small chain of, they had two shops. It was like a takeaway food shop and a famous chicken shop owned by the Buckles family. And they were infamous because the day before, all the meats from the carry meats and the bacon and the sausages would be put into this gluttonous red curry sauce and then cooked into a curry for the following day. So Buckles eventually closed down. So the lady on the Flaxby Road row of shops had lots of people asking for it, particularly for the curry. So she resurrected the curry out of homage to Buckles, and there it is. She sells out every day, believe it or not. I have to say, I sent to a lot of people on WhatsApp, and I've had people reply to stuff like it, really. It's just what it is. It's sausages, lots of sausages, bits of yesterday's meat, cooked up and put on a big pile of chips. It looks pretty grim, I have to say, but it tastes really good. Yeah, but that aside, yes, it was quite nice to see all the pubs open in Selby, and the Cricketers Arms and Sam Smith's pubs that used to be famous for its food. I worked there 17 years ago for a few months, and we would go endless lunchtimes. They had a hot food counter on there, and all the food was home cooked with great pies and chorizo, roast potatoes, and joints and things like that. You just could not get a seat. I never got to eat in there, and been there about 4 or 5 months. And then, of course, they stopped doing the food, or the trade dropped away. But I thought it'd be closed, like so many pubs are around here. But actually, it was open. It's had a bit of restoration job outside and in. Put some stained glass above the bar. Really pushing the bottle beers there, which for those people who know Selby, seems it's a really strange destination to push the bottle beer range, but they were. And it was really nice in there now. We'd love to see it open. And then, of course, the best rail destination in Selby is the Doghouse, just down from the station, around the corner from the Abbey there. Interesting, the Doghouse. It's spread over 2 floors. Quite dark atmospheric downstairs, about 6 rail ale pumps and then loads of keg and craft beers, lots of Thornbridge stuff on in there as well. And upstairs, a bit bright for me was decor upstairs. But yeah, I mean, unlike anywhere else in Selby, quite reasonably priced. The beer, I have to say, was incredibly well kept. I was drinking the EP in there. So if you do go there, walk down the station. So I didn't actually go in the Giant Bellflower because working where I work in Selby, probably not the best destination to go.
I think the other one they mentioned in Selby, and I think we did it back in episode 5. Looking at a good beer guide, is the Crescent, which I think is that near the Doghouse. Number 1, the Crescent, which is a bit of a micro bar, isn't it?
It is down now.
It's just one of the oldest pubs in town and close to Selby Abbey, and that was owned by Old Mill, which I know you're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, no, the Crescent that must be on the right the other side of the Abbey on the road. Yeah. Because I got a couple of times to still it. I want to come to look it out, so I should look in there really. But yeah, it's Selby's obviously been a place that was decimated and all the pits closed down. It's Abbey's. It's very much its saving grace, but it ticks along. It's got still got a department store there, but definitely the town one's still in transition. I think it's fair to say, really, Selby.
Very good. And then again, if you've been following my Twitter or our Twitter account, you'll see that I was in. I think I mentioned again, I was in London. Again, it was a fantastic day. I was in London. I was speaking at a conference thing and finished a little bit early. Had a couple of hours to kill, so we were out at we're actually on Whitechapel, and in fact there was a pub there called the Old White Hart that said it was a 15th century, which fortunately it was closed as I came out of the place I was to get on the tube. But I thought, well, rather than get the tube and go all the way back to Euston, I'll get off. And I walked in. So I mentioned that I'd never ever been the parcel yard. I know you guys have. So I went into King's Cross. Took a bit of finding, I would say. Eventually found it kind of round the corner. Went upstairs. It was pretty quiet actually. I've got pictures there. Very strange looking.
You just look for the Harry Potter idiots who are all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because the Harry Potter thing. Yeah. So I went up there. They had quite a nice range of beers on. Again, a new one that I'd not come across was Fuller's Oliver's Island, which is a golden ale. So I had a pint of that. It was quite a nice day. So rather than kind of sit, it's a bit dark and not dangerous, wrong word. It's a bit dark inside. So I managed to sit again for those above the toilet sign for those that are looking on YouTube and had a nice pint there. So that was quite nice. Then I don't know, maybe it didn't quite live up to my expectations. I know you two have said it's not a bad place. It's big, isn't it? I guess I was there on a quiet, whatever it was, Wednesday afternoon, so about 3:00. So it wasn't particularly busy.
It's just handy for its location when you're catching the train at King's Cross.
I did read. I don't know. I was just a bit of reading about it. And I think a couple of times recently it's actually run out of beer. They've had no. Wow. It's been that busy. They've run out of cask beer. I think that maybe was kind of pandemic. And in the end, they were just flogging out lots of bottles. Or it was a good ploy to flog a load of bottles they had maybe in stock that were running short. Now, again, Bruce, you put us onto this because again, you remember last time you'd shared, I think it was the Londonist or the Londonist had shared kind of where to drink in each station. So obviously next to King's Cross is St. Pancras. So I thought, you know what, while I'm here, I know there's a weather. I think Nick, you mentioned there's a spoon on St. Pancras, but I thought, tell you what, I'm going to try that Betchamin Arms, which you'd mentioned. I'd never seen that before. Again, is a little bit. I wouldn't say it's hard to find. If you go in the station, you won't see it. So you got to come out of the station, because St. Pancras kind of is downstairs. You kind of it's all like you walk under the tracks, don't you, kind of thing. And again, unbelievable amount of shops and cafes and restaurants. It's just bonkers, isn't it?
Masons, hasn't it?
Yeah. So if you come out and you go up to where the hotel is, where the old kind of entrance to the railway was, in the right corner, opposite side from where the hotel is the Betchamin Arms. And yeah, what a fantastic little place. Very much in keeping. I think my photos don't really do it justice for those on YouTube. The bottom left is the front of the, if you like, the hotel placard. You come up from the station on those steps on the right hand side there.
Not the Renaissance Hotel.
Yeah, that's on the other side.
Yeah.
The picture, the top left on the screen, that's the station side. And again, the middle picture is that view of the international, the what was it, Eurostar terminal bit there. So it actually, the pub itself, you can walk straight through and come out on the station side as well. So lots of red leather banquets.
Oh, nice.
And apparently it's a Young's pub, although it's Geronimo Inns that run it, but actually they're a sub of Young's. So actually I had a Young's, a very nice Young's beer. It was very nice. Apparently it was opened in 2014, which again is quite a while ago. Had a major refurb in 2018. It's named Betchamin because obviously the poet Betchamin, John Betchamin, was such a massive campaigner to save St. Pancras when they kind of, bloody created the horrible King's Cross as it now is. And in fact, they stripped some of the old crap away, haven't they? No, the new crap. Which actually looks quite nice now, King's Cross, have its second refurb. Oh, yeah. But when they were blowing it all up in the 50s, I guess, he was a big thing. So you've got to keep that red brick facade. So that's why they've named it. They do have a house beer, which is brewed by Sharps, which by all accounts is simply Cornish coaster rebridged as the Betjeman's Ale. So I didn't actually see that on offer, so I went for the Youngs. But definitely worth. I know you guys said you hadn't been in there. Definitely worth going in. It's quite posh. It's quite posh inside. There's not many people drinking. They're merely having a glass of wine and something to eat and a really good menu. But definitely, and again, if the weather's nice, there are some nice seats outside. It's quite quiet because that kind of bit of pancreas is kind of pushed back a little bit. So much so, as I walked out, bloody Jensen Button was there doing some kind of car thing. TV were there. There was a very posh Morgan and a very posh Rolls Royce, and I don't know, it's something to do with obviously the Formula One started, hasn't it?
Wow.
So there's a Renaissance hotel there behind Jensen, but that's on the other side of that pulling really, and then ended up at my normal haunt, which is the Euston Tap. And as you can see by the pictures, it was a fantastic, and it was really lovely. They got all the seats outside because sometimes it's a bit hard there to get a seat. They have some permanent seating on the left-hand side with a bit of cover, but actually they just, as you can see in the picture, they just put loads of seats out all around that area there, and it was fantastic. So sat there, and again, as I tweeted, I had a very nice pint of Redemption Trinity, which cost me the grand price of £4, which I think is pretty good for central London. And again, I did do it hasn't quite come out so well, the beer board, but they got an Adams on, they got Tailored Landlord on, and that was only £4.40 a pint. The normal, just thousands of bloody cask beers, but keg beers. But I went for that one, so that was very nice. So I recommend all those three. Certainly, be catching a train from London. I had my usual trip out on Friday night. Went to my usual Mellard, so I got a pint for Nick and a pint for myself on the picture there. A very, very clear, nice pint of cask, and a very cloudy, mangoey, orangey one. Actually, that the pint was a nice, very nice Burning Sky. Plateau, Burning Sky, actually quite a well-known brewery now. And then I went off to my normal finish, which was the hop cellar. Again, I had a couple of craft beers in there, and ended up on Banter, which is a 12% imperial stout. And it just says, I'll just read you the description for those that are not on YouTube. Darker than Darth Vader's heart, this sumptuous imperial stout brewed with honey, hazelnuts, coffee, and cocoa has layers of flavour working in harmony with a big boozy finish, and that was a 12%. So I only managed a third of that, but it was actually very nice, quite a nice way to end the night actually as well. So yeah, good drinks. So beer news, Bruce, you sent me this as well. I got this earlier on. This was in the Mirror that Marston's are putting 45p on all of their various different pub chains. They blame that on the cost of living crisis. I know you sent me a link, Bruce, from the Express where they were talking about 75p. But again, I thought I read that tonight. Actually, I read it again, and they're blaming the Ukraine conflict on the impact on grain. But we in Britain we tend not to use grain very much. We tend to use malt, and of course, virtually all the malt in British brewery comes from Britain. So I'm not quite sure how they can claim that it's a 75p inflation. And again, they didn't name any pub chain in particular. They just said that pubs and breweries are putting 75p on there. So again, it felt a bit lazy.
Did they also say it's going to snow every day until the end of the year as well?
Snow again.
They normally do.
Yeah.
And again,
Daily Express focus on snow, winds, and Madeline McCann being found out.
Yeah. But definitely, I think, we've all mentioned the prices are definitely creeping up, and I guess they're going to get worse, aren't they? Because I think, with the fuel and the energy thing that kicks in tomorrow, we're recording this on 31st of March, so 1st of April is when the energy cap comes off. And like they said, the big pressure is on. It's not gas per se. It's all about gas on the bloody TV, but it's not. It's electric, isn't it? Because we're all going to pay more because they're putting the increased tariff on your standing order to pay back for all the stuff that's gone on previously. So it's
I think Wetherspoons they're putting theirs up by 20 pence, aren't they? So pints are £2.19 in Wetherspoons now. Yeah. Oh, terrible. Yeah, still got me 50 pence vouchers though.
Come back to that in a minute. So we mentioned last week that, again, a tweet from Malton Brewery, the Yorkshire Pudding Brewery, and that they were moving their new kit. And in fact, actually, my son spotted this on eBay this week. They were selling the old kit. So if you really want to, you could buy a full microbrewery kit used by Malton Brewery for the last 3 years for the grand price of £770. You see, not bad, that. So we mentioned that they said they were getting a lot of new kits in. Obviously, this is the brewery is based just as you come into Malton, in some of the old estate kind of buildings, quite near to the Talbot Hotel. So yeah, that was on eBay this week. Bruce, I don't know if you came across this Vavar Brew. This was where Euro Boozer, which is kind of a wholesale company. They're saving all the beer that's been left in Ukraine that can't be sold. So 45,000 pints of beer from Kiev-based craft brewer Vavar Brew is being brought over to the UK. And again, they were very keen to get people to, because I know you mentioned you were trying to look for some Ukraine beer a couple of weeks ago, weren't you? So again, maybe worth, and Trembling Madness will have it in, or they may have already sold out, but Trembling Madness in York, they were the ones that were saying that you could, hopefully they were going to get some in that you could go along and buy. So it was interesting. I just thought I'd just put this on because we mentioned this before, and Brew York, I'll come back to in a minute. It's their 6th birthday. I think I couldn't decide last week whether it was their 6th or their 10th birthday, and they've got their 6th party coming up. And they've been on I think they've been up the North East. I don't know whether they're doing some collab work, but they come across a fantastic pub, and there is a pint of Strong Arm, which we talked about last week, didn't we? Because C was one of my words. And this is one of those banked pints that you often get in Hartlepool and Middlesbrough, which is like a pint on steroids with a Mr. Twirly head on it, isn't it? where it's kind of a bit of a tradition in the North East where you get over poured, so you get this massive head on it that goes beyond the glass. So that was quite nice as well. So I mentioned that it was the Thornbridge monthly box, and as I say, what they then do on the first Thursday is they do a kind of tasting, and a couple of the guys in the brewery, and then random people like me kind of join along. And because they've done a couple of collabs, I mentioned last time the Big Eagle, or their I can't remember what they called it now. I drank it live, didn't last week. So they had Wayne from Brew York was on, as well as the guy from Big Smoke. So it was really interesting. As always, give you a really good countdown on the beers and explain them. And it's quite nice in that Wayne from Brew York was actually coming live from the shed where Brew York were actually formed just over 6 years ago, because they've been brewing in the brew where they are now for 6 years, and so that was quite nice. And he was quite good. He talked a lot about the brewery, about what they've got planned for the future. Look out for they're doing their Pardos range, and the next one they're doing is Banoffee Pardos Imperial Stout. So I think that's in the box next week. They talked about their new brewery, because I think we mentioned before, haven't they? They're moving out. Is it Outgang Road or something like that? Brews the new brewery.
Yes, out near the back of B&Q off the Hull Road down to Osbaldwick. So going to keep the other one open as well. They're going to operate both brews apparently. Yeah,
they're going to keep the kind of the home, if you like, the original site as their beer hall as a because that's pretty much Central York, isn't it? But actually, a lot of the 6th birthday celebrations are actually going to be at the new brewery to kind of kick it off.
Yeah, and he was quite tender if you want.
Yeah, he was quite open and said, if you've ever been to Thornbridge Brewery, when you arrive here, you're going to see a Brew York version of a Thornbridge Brewery tap. So he said, we've gone for a big warehouse space. We've put in a pizza oven. So he said, to be honest, Thornbridge, you guys have showed us the way all the way through this. So that'd be nice, maybe nice to try and get out there once and have a look. He said, they're planning it. And then the other thing said about is that I had seen these, but they're also partnering up this year with the London Craft Beer Cruise. So starting, I think, pretty soon on those clipper boats, I presume it's kind of, and I think it's in the evening, they do a craft beer cruise. And again, what tends to happen is there's a different brewery on different slots. I think you get something like 6 beers and a glass, and you go up and down the Thames. So again, I've just put the thing in there. I'll maybe do a little bit more investigation into that. But Brew York are going to be one of the key partners for that this year. So if you go on there, you'll find a Brew York beer most sailings, but on particular sailings, it'll be all Brew York beers. So again, I guess that's quite a nice way, isn't it, of expanding your reach, isn't it? And quite a nice way of doing it, really. So yeah, Points of Brew is another podcast, and I was listening because I noticed they'd done a Leeds one, and it's the guy that does the Leeds beer tours was on, talking a little bit about how he had kind of set up Leeds beer tours just before COVID and what he was doing, and they got into that discussion about Wetherspoons. And again, I came across somebody else on Twitter was mentioning this. Wow. There's an advert there, manager special, 99p for a pint of Doom Bar. And of course, they were making the point that's making it quite hard at the moment. And Nick mentioned that when you've got the 50p vouchers as well, you're getting a pint of cask ale for £1.50. And their argument was, cask ale is what hand produced in the main, isn't it? It's crafted. It's made from natural ingredients. Most people are trying to flog it at about £5.50, £6 a pint, and yet you've got something like Wetherspoons completely undercutting the market by flogging cheap beer. And there's a knock-on effect for that is when people go in a bottle shop, they probably will pay £4, £5 for a can. But when they go in a normal, a traditional free house, and like we sometimes do, we say, oh God, £4.50 a pint, £5 a pint. And some of that is because we're used to, or quite a few of us are used to, and they were discussing about whether camera are actually kind of part of the problem because they give out those vouchers. And in fact, they both said that they rip all their vouchers up because they don't, their view. Well, I thought it was an interesting view. Their view was, I shouldn't want to, take 50p off a landlord or landlady. I should give them the 50p and let them, buy our beer. So I don't know. Interesting point of view, really. One that I'd probably not thought again about before. I mean, I know we've talked about maybe not the 99p's because I think you managed to get a couple of those, but I've never seen them. But like you say, with that 50p off, you're getting a pint for 140, 145 in most Wetherspoons, aren't you? So what?
That can be the difference deciding to go out or not at all in an evening. I mean, I don't go to Wetherspoons and stop in a Wetherspoons all night, but I know that by going in a Wetherspoons during the course of the night, it's going to bring the cost of my night out to what I want to pay. Yeah. And in that respect, I don't mind ever going another pub. I have to pay £4.50 because I know I've saved £2 or £3 in Wetherspoons. Yeah. So it balances it out. I mean, any industry, any market does this. It's the same as your Fortnum and Masons or Waitrose complaining that Poundland knocking stuff out at a cheap price. It's stack it high and sell it cheap. It's your profit margins at the end of the day, really. And, brewers aren't forced to sell their beer to Wetherspoons, and some people have decided not to do that. I always remember, Moulton Brewery saying that they didn't want to put all their eggs into one basket. It would be great to have, Sotheby's beer on Wetherspoons bars all over the country. But what happens then if all of a sudden Wetherspoons suddenly turn around and say, right, we're not going to stock you anymore? And they've had to concentrate on just supplying Wetherspoons and not being able to supply all the smaller pubs and bars around there. But it is certainly a way, I think, of getting your beer out there nationally and letting people see what you're doing, really.
Mm. I mean, I don't know. I suppose, let's be honest, a 99p pint of beer, it's 50 odd pence of that is actually duty and tax, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So, that means that you're buying a pint of Doom Bar here for 40p. It costs a lot more than 40p to produce a pint of Doom Bar, I would imagine. Well,
I don't know. We've all got our opinions on Doom Bar now, haven't we?
Well, all right, Ruddles then, a pint of Ruddles.
And the quantities that these massive, great, mega breweries are brewing at, and the quality of the ingredients they're putting in, then you could say, well, it's maybe costing only 3 pence a pint to make a pint.
Yeah. Oh, well, we might come back to that. So, but again, Points of Brew, it's worth having listened to. Episode 35 is about Leeds. And again, it covers quite a lot of the ground that we've covered. And again, a couple of Yorkshire lads talking about Leeds is always good stuff. So it's, again, interesting. It's a slightly different tack to one that we take. It tends to be more of a one-on-one with breweries and people who work in the beer industry. So, again, well worth looking at if you're looking for some podcasts maybe over Easter. So let's get back then to our A to Z. So in episode 32, we did A, B, C. So again, as I said, I pulled out of the hat H, O, and V last time round. So we've each chosen either a pub, a beer, a brewery, or something that reminds us of a trip or a trip we'd like to in the future. So let's kick off with H. So here is, I think I called him Bob last week. Actually, this guy's called Dave. And again, I thought we better pay due homage to him. Sorry, not Dave, Jack. So Jack Hartman is the guy that we use on our YouTube, on our YouTube slides to kind of give us our let, because he sings lots of songs about age. But hey, he's got 3.2 million bloody subscribers. So maybe we need to jump on the back of Jack and use him. So Jack, if you're listening, we'll love your H, we'll love your O, we'll love your V. So the letter H. So I'm going to kick H off. So mine was thinking about a place, and I was a bit torn here. So I initially thought about Huddersfield, mainly because we had a cracking day, although we got absolutely piss wet through in whatever storm that one was. But we had a great day in Huddersfield, including a very memorable lunch in the Merry England with some very placid roast beef sandwiches. But we had a good session in the Rat, didn't we? We went there first. We had a great time in the Grove, actually, which is a cracking pub. We ended up did we go on the King's Head in the end, didn't we, on the station? I think we did. Rather than the other one. We went to King's Head, did we? And obviously Huddersfield is the central point of the Trans-Pennine Real Ale Trail. But in the end, I thought, yeah, it was all right. But I know at the end of that session that day, actually, we all were a little bit mixed, really. I think it's not quite what it was when we first did that back in the 90s. So I ended up with Hull because, again, we had a good sessions in Hull. We did it back in episode 5. The Hull Ale Trail is there. There's actually now, I didn't notice, there's a whole Low A Trail as well, which is interesting. So always kind of moving forward. Some cracking pubs in Hull. We've mentioned quite a few. I thought my choice would be start off in the Minerva down there by the river, which you can't really beat, can you? And again, we shared, I think there's a picture of me and Nick in that little corner window there in that little cubby hole. Probably then come back into the Old Town and go to either the Old Black Boy and or the Lion and was it called the Lion and Key, isn't it? Which is a funny name. Which we were in there, Nick. We were in there not long ago. We're quite nice in there. And
always smells of fish and chips, though.
Yeah, and then end up at the Hop and Vine.
They're homemade fish and chips, and it always stinks of fish.
And then go downstairs into the dungeon, which is the Hop and Vine, and look for the little man, a bit like on Mr. Ben, who'll come up behind the curtain and serve you craft ales.
Which is one with the tiny window? What's one with the tiny window?
Oh, the old White Hart.
No.
Yeah.
No, we don't go in that pub, Bruce. We always peer through the window. Yeah, it's supposed to be the smallest window in the country. Right. And they reckoned in the times of coaches, they used to have a little bellboy who used to sit there and peep through that little gap. And when a stagecoach arrived, he would dash out and collect people's luggage for them.
I mean, cracky load of pubs in York and Hull, sorry, and again, a growing number of breweries as well. Quite a lot of heritage pubs in Hull, especially around the Old Town. I know you guys mentioned the Polar Bear, which again apparently is now up and running again with its fantastic marble bear.
Yeah.
Again, a couple of
Minerva's a fantastic pub, though, isn't it? And it's
Minerva, yeah.
Huge big pub as well, isn't it? But that little tiny snug and the way they maintain it, I mean, inside now it's fantastic, really, isn't it?
The garden roof terrace at the Admiral of the Humber is supposed to be very nice as well.
The Wetherspoons pub, they've got a roof terrace in the Humber.
Yeah. There's rooms there, yeah. So they've got a hotel. And then, as I say, they reckon there's got a massive great area up on the roof. I don't know what sort of view you get, really, but yeah.
I mean, I think they're opening one on the station, aren't we? I don't know when it's open yet, but I know there's plans to open another kind of a bit like a York Harrogate tap thing on the hum. So Hull was my H choice. Nicholas, yours was a pub in York, which we've mentioned many times on the podcast.
It was, yeah. We've just mentioned that being across to the lakes this weekend. So when I go to the lakes, I always do go to the Hawkshead Brewery tap. Still like it there. Obviously, it's been taken over now. A lot of the staff who were working there, unfortunately, were let go, and they've started their own brewery. So if I lived over that way, then I would have probably been to the Hawkshead Brewery. But the pub I go to more often, if I'm going to York, is the Hop. Once again, it's unusual, I suppose, in a way that it's not a traditional pub. It is a traditional building. I think it was a butcher's at one point, so it's got a lot more features in there. It's in an area that is central and in an area that's surrounded by a lot of other bars and places like that are always full. But I've always managed to go in the Hop, no matter what day or time, and get a seat at least. And the best seats, as you know, Mike, is when you can get in the windows. It's got a central door entry, and then you've got glass windows either side, and you can get sat in the window and watch the world go by. It's Ossett pub, so they have the full range of beers on. Nice big blackboard, so you can see what's on offer and how much you're paying as well. So yeah, I would go for the Hop.
I'll tell the trouble with Ossett beers. I mean, I love Ossett beers. I really used to love them, but they're everywhere now, aren't they? They're everywhere you go. There's Ossett beer, and it's almost like, familiarity breeds contempt, doesn't it?
Yeah. I've noticed that your white rat is everywhere. I mean, in all our pubs down here in Staffordshire, they've got white rat on. So, like you say, it seems to now. I guess let's keep an eye on the quality. Great that they are. I think they're great. They are a great brewery. They've got some great pubs, haven't they? I mean, that pub in Huddersfield mentioned. Our preface, Nick, is that window behind the wheelie bin for those looking on YouTube, isn't it? And there you are, sat by said window, having a nice beer in there. Their beers aren't cheap though, are they? They're not expensive, but they're on the pushing it. $3.90.
They're okay for York City Centre. I mean, Bruce's favourite pub down that street is across the road, but you're paying another 30-40 pence in there.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Nick's H.
They've had to say Ossett is the best kept Ossett beer anyway. Is the Cross Keys in Knaresborough, which is also the cheapest. It's not 25p a pint less than in York, but the way the guys keep their beers, bear in mind that they're closed 4 lunchtimes a week. Only open, so how they keep them. That should be anybody who's looking to keep a pint of Ossett beer needs to go there for lessons. It's absolutely fantastic.
And again, that time we were in there when we came back on the way from Harrogate, we made the point quite a lot of everyone else was drinking lager. So, it's not like there's churning a lot of it out, but like I said, it's definitely well kept. So that's Nick now. So now we've got, episode 33. So in every episode, since episode 1, we always mention at least two pub chains and owners. Obviously, we've already talked a lot about Wetherspoons. And the other one, we've mentioned, actually, we didn't mention it. The cricketers in Selby is a Sam Smith's pub. I don't know where you mentioned that, Bruce, but it is. So Bruce's H, unsurprisingly, is Humford Richard Woolcombe Smith. And there's a very dapper photo I found of Humphrey, the owner, the matriarch, the patriarch, the whatever he is of obviously Samuel Smith's brewing. So Humphrey Smith, Bruce.
An extraordinary chap he is too. I mean, what's amazing is you found that picture. I think, as far as I'm aware, there are only two pictures of him that exist, because it's either this one of him when he's obviously in his early 30s, or a present one where he's looking a bit dishevelled and he's now in his 70s. I mean,
hang on. Somebody got a picture of him sat in a Wetherspoons. Honestly, Google it. Somebody got a photograph of him sat in a Wetherspoons
on his phone. Yeah, that was illicit, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, the thing about he fascinates us, and I mean, we go to a few Sam Smith pubs because me and friends got the village pubs, and I'm going to our second year's pub to us tonight after we finish this. And what's amazing is, I mean, for a man so steeped in mystery, wherever you go to the pubs, and especially in Tadcaster, is the sole topic of conversation. I remember being in the Royal Oak at the Crossroads when you just went to Tadcaster one day in winter. The pub was full of people. And I said to my friend, I said, listen to what they're all talking about. There was only one possible comment, just that the people that are obsessed with him. Probably a good reason.
Well, mainly because he stops them getting over the river when the bridge breaks down. He don't let him build a new one for 4 years because he didn't want to build on his land.
There's very little comprehension, he said. But I mean, the man's an enigma, isn't he? I mean, we know something about him. We think there are all sorts of tales about him, and nobody really knows the truth from the urban myths. Apparently, he's a billionaire. The pubs that represent only about 5% of his wealth reputedly.
He owns Canary Wharf, doesn't he, by all accounts? So that's
what happened was, apparently, he again, urban myth this, apparently he noticed that Rupert Murdoch was buying up great swaths of disused land in East London, and said to one of his friends, this Murdoch's no fool, he's buying up all this land. And his friend said, oh, bloody, it's wasteland, no one's going to go there. There's thousands of acres, is it? And Humphrey Smith then bought up, apparently, hundreds of acres of it as well. And infamously went on to own the land that Canary Wharf was built on, taking a share in the building. And apparently, great around that area of Canary Wharf, that was his land, and he still has great holdings down there. Apparently, him and his brother at one point were the biggest owners of quarries in the country. And I say, if you live around here in North Yorkshire, sadly now an increased amount of these pubs are closed. These pubs, the Pint and Soul, the Village. In many cases, he invested heavily in them to make them really nice, and he can't get anybody to run them. And it's becoming, really bad. Some for great villages and the pubs with the Heart and Soul around here, we could mention 8 or 9 really. And a lot of everybody moans it. It says it's his terms and conditions. Have to be careful what you say on here, because I don't want to sue him back. But yeah, if you go through some amazing tales. And
again, we've got to say, we do say it. The Smiths as a company have some fantastic heritage buildings. They do preserve them. They do spend money on them.
Yeah.
You know, they're not run down pubs. I mean, they sometimes might look like that, but you know, they're always well looked after. You know, say why not? I mean, again, that you know, there was
he use quality craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Unlike the big pub chains,
yeah.
he spends money to make sure that when the job's done, it's done properly. It's not fake timber and special clever paint job. It's proper artisan work and you know, right the way back to, you know, commission X glass and stuff like that. And I'm
reading a book, you know, about the trends in pubs and things that Boke and Bailey wrote. And you know, marketing people have spent millions trying to recreate, you know, the Irish pub and the old traditional pub. Well, Smiths just do that, don't they? You know, they don't let jukeboxes and televisions in their pubs and big screens, and they don't let mobile phones in. And that means, and sometimes they let kids in, but that means that if you want to go and have a quiet pint and have a chat, like we talked about in the Seahorse in York, it's great, isn't it? That's what you do. And it normally be a real fire. Okay, the beer is a bit limited, but it's cheap and it's good and it tastes okay. There is a range. To be honest, there's a range, isn't it? Because you know we've talked about the miles. There's the lagers. There's the organic lager. There's Taddy lager, and then as you mentioned, Bruce, all those bottles. You know, some fantastic bottled beers. I mentioned that, you know, a lot of craft brewers in America still. Sam Smith is there. You know, that's where they got their innovation.
Yeah.
You know,
fruit
beers, wheat beers. Yeah. Okay, so that's how H is. So we've got a place, Hull. We've got a pub in York, the Hop, and we've got the iconic head of a brewing dynasty, Humphrey Smith. So let's move on to our next letter. Here's Jack with our letter O, and I think Bruce, you're kicking us off here with quite surprised when you came up with this one.
Well, yeah, there was Ossett. Everyone knows about Ossett, really. And Old Mill's a cracking brewer. They've been around now, I say, since the mid 1980s, and very little known, really. But an intriguing brewery. I mean, they're based in Snaith, which is a really picturesque little town in East Yorkshire between Selby and Goole. River runs through it, a fantastic place, a couple of cracking butchers there, but they have a really interesting pub estate, don't they? They tend to have one pub in little towns. For example, some huge old roadhouses in Rotherham, Mexborough. We've got one pub in York, but the beers themselves are really quite lovely, aren't they? In fact, we'll have to go to Victoria next time you come. I've been there for years, have we, really? But I mean, they just keep going and going very quietly, going around the business, no great fuss. And I do believe you can actually go on a brewery tour as well, which I'd really like to do, yeah.
I'm just reading now, opened in 1983, 200-year-old former malt kiln and corn mill, which that looks a fantastic place where the brewery is.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
60 barrels. The brewery is building in a retired estate, now standing at 16 houses. Beers can be found nationwide through wholesalers and around 83 trade outlets.
I mean, I think for us, when we started drinking beer, 1983 was the same. We all turned 16. So obviously, in those days, there wasn't the explosion rail as there was now. So discovering any rail ale was a great thrill. And I think it used to pop up quite a lot, didn't it? So they've really stood the test of time, really. But without any great fanfare, they just bootle along. They
were kind of the new wave of cask brewers, weren't like you said? They come across as being quite just, but they're not. Like you said, they're the 80s, and they kind of were that new wave of cask, that's what they did. And I can remember, they were probably one of the first guest beers that you began to see in pubs that began to go beyond their tie, serving their strong arms and their Tetleys. This was the beer that you often got us on that kind of spare pump. So, yeah, you're right.
I also seem to think that, I know we used to go in was it the Mission in Hull?
Yes, that was an Old Mill pub. You're right, Nick. And
I think that was one of the first places that I saw this movement from traditional rail ale served out of a hand pump. And I don't know, I might be wrong, but I thought they were one of the first to start doing a blonde, to do a blonde beer and then dispense it out of electric, rather than just, we don't have any hand pumps, we're going to dispense everything out of electric, like some Sam Smith pubs have been all the time. But no, I seem to recall that they almost did a version of Dizzy Blonde themselves.
Oh, there's a blonde bombshell, blonde bomb.
Well, that's it, yeah.
The Bullion IPA, I remember that because it's an IPA, but it's only 3.7. Traditional bitter, which is again malty nose carried through to the initial flavour, and then blonde bombshell, which was a 4%. And now they do.
But I seem to remember seeing that as a beer on electric dispense, long before a lot of the breweries were doing it. The mission, as it sounds like, it was no Siemens mission, so it's almost like walking into a church. It's in the old town, next to the marina, and huge cavernous place, and it's still got the pulpit in it there, and it's still got the stained glass windows.
Okay, so that's Bruce's which is the Old Mill Brewery, and as mentioned again, he didn't quite manage to get into the Crescent in Selby, but they're an Old Mill pub, so that would have been a nice link. But then there we go. So I can't remember who's next actually. Oh, I'm next. So on a similar theme to some extent, my O would be Oakham Citra. So a similar story really. Oakham are again one of those new wave cask breweries. By all accounts, they were the first brewery to bring in the Citra hop. The head brewer went across to America and he picked up that these new citrusy hops were coming in, and he was the first person that brought them back. And he put them together in Oakham Citra, which is a session IPA, 4.2%. I've got to say, if I ever see it on the bar, it's probably the one that I would go for. I think for me, it's
lovely beer, yeah.
One of those crisp, zesty IPAs, clear, clean, 4.2. So it's got a little bit of kick to it. I was looking at, I was amazed actually how many beers they do, and just if I just move our pictures a bit here, in that they do quite a range of beers as well. Again, you tend not to see them because you just tend to see Citra. They do GHB Inferno, one with the macaw on it, and one with an Abbott's hat on it. But to me, it's a cracking beer. It was the beer of Britain in 2014. But what in 2022 is still knocking around as a really, really decent beer. So I've had a couple of pints recently. Often in that pub I took you in, Nick, the Swan and Spoon, they normally have Citra on. It's been in Mellard's, my local, as well, a couple of times. So Oakham Citra, I think you guys both like it.
That
Nick,
was the time we had a pint was in Wakefield, wasn't it, Nick? And
it was a nice start to the day, that, wasn't it, Bruce?
It's a lovely views, Oakham Citra, and I say, like you, it tops of my seat. It's the one I'll elevate to. It always seems to travel really well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So,
you mentioned the hops, though, Mike. Going back to H, really, we should have chosen hops as a H, because hop is a secret ingredient that makes the beer taste different, isn't it? Yeah. You've got your water, you've got your barley, you've got your yeast, which, you can get different yeast strains, which makes the beer taste slightly different. But the main ingredient that makes the biggest difference is the humble hop, and all its many, many, many different varieties now.
Well, I think we go with Citra because Citra is the hop that makes Citra the beer it is. I can't remember what your O was. What's your there we go. There's a nice link there, Nicholas. So your O has got a similar thing to it, and your O was.
Let's go back to Sam Smith's Old Brewery Bitter. And I know you're not a fan of it, Mike, but I think it's distinctive because it is from the wood, and obviously just like wine that is matured in the barrel, and even whiskey. When whiskey is first produced, it's clear, and the character from a whiskey comes out of the wood that it's stored in, and it's set down in. So, Old Brewery, it is acquired taste, and you mentioned that a lot of people grumble and say, "Oh, there's not a very good beer range, and even the normal bitter don't taste very nice." But I suppose that's people who aren't used to drinking a traditional beer from the wood. And whenever I go anywhere, certainly down into London, it's home from home, enjoying a pint of Old Brewery Bitter.
And I'd much prefer a pint of soft drink myself, but there we go.
Yeah, well, that's what you guys do. But no, I'll stick traditional, thank you.
I can't stand it. I drink the toddy lager.
I think it's one of those. It's a bit like Peddy. It's a bit like Marston's Peddy when it's served around here. I think you've got to drink it regularly because it has got a certain. I call it the Burton Snatch, and it's the Tadcaster. I guess it's that kind of what is it? It's the lime. Not a long word, is it? What I'm thinking about here, it's this kind of salts in it, isn't it? It's that.
No, I don't. I think it's coming from the wood. I think it's almost like a tannin.
Yeah,
I think it's a tannin for taste. I mean, I don't drink wine, but the tannin is it's that earthy. It's out the wood. I'm sure that's what it is. And a similar brew that I used to like, and I mentioned before, was when Wards were brewing in Sheffield. That had a very distinctive taste to it. It was one of those beers that you had to start off start off at the beginning of the night with and stick on it, and it was good. If you were on Stones or anything else, Whitbread or any other beers, and then had a pint of Wards, it was like, wow, no, this isn't quite right. But it wasn't because the beer was off; it was just because it had such a distinctive character.
I guess I mean as well. It's quite. I wouldn't say it's a flat beer, but it's not as aerated, and it's often pulled slightly. I'm wondering whether that's the barrel as well, because the barrel maybe soaks up some of that natural carbon dioxide that kind of gives the beer a bit of fizz. I'm thinking, compared to Sam's has never been pulled like say a pint of Tatler's used to be pulled. You never got that creaminess from Sam. It's a more of a like Bass, I guess, in a way.
Sam Smith's pubs, they don't like to pull it too quick because they know they can't waste any. They're not allowed to have any beer going over the top into the slop tray because it all has to be minutely measured.
True. Yeah. So that was 2 beers. So all brewery bitter from Nick. Mine was Oakham Citra. And Bruce, you went for a brewery, which was the Old Mill Brewery in Snaith. So let's move on to our V. So here's Jack again with our letter V. And again, it's that long since I put this here. I can't remember who's going first. I'm going first. So mine's a bit different for this one. So mine is a drink for my letter V. And my letter V is for velvet, as in black velvet. But actually, it's what we used to call black velvet in Yorkshire. And we're going to tell a story in a minute. We got into trouble once. But actually, the real black velvet, of course, is champagne and a Guinness, which is a cocktail that is still quite popular and often with oysters. So black velvet I don't know why, Bruce, but when we were 18, 19, it was our drink of choice. I don't know. I think again, we're talking about the days when there wasn't a great deal of choice, was there? Literally, it was Double Diamond and literally an Ansel's whatever, and then probably a Skull Lager or whatever. Right. And for whatever reason, I guess it's because we were a bit weird and we were a bit different.
Yeah, you were
drinking
freaky weirdos. That's why.
We used to drink.
Instead of drinking straight cider or pints of Answer, no, you have to be freaky weirdos.
I guess we're in that thing with Bumfluff where you're not quite used to drinking.
What you're drinking,
you're not. You need a bit of sweetness, do you? It's like the alcohol pop thing. And I guess the cider and Guinness mix had that nice headiness. It gave you quite a powerful alcoholic kick. And it looked different. I mean, to be honest, when you mix cider and Guinness, it just looks like fizzy Guinness, really. So apparently Black Velvet was a cocktail created by the barman at the Brooks Club in London to commemorate the death of Prince Albert back in 1861. So Prince Albert was obviously Queen Victoria's consort and husband. And obviously when he died, everything went black and jet jewelry from Whitby, etc. And the drink was to symbolise the black worn by Queen Victoria in her mourning phase. Now, what happens with champagne and Guinness is they have different densities. So apparently what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to pour your champagne in your glass first. And then you tend to use a spoon to pour the Guinness in. And that's why you get that 2-tier thing that, again, for those on YouTube, you can see that the Guinness floats on top of the champagne. Although on the Guinness advert that I've also got on there, they've done it the other way around. And in fact, in that one, they've got the Guinness at the bottom and the champagne at the top. But they will sit on top of each other because they're different densities.
I would have thought champagne will sit on top of Guinness rather than the other way around, to be honest.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Well, you can see that one there. No, I think apparently the real cocktail is champagne first and then stout poured over the back of a spoon on the top so it floats.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'll be a very thin layer of Guinness on the top. Yeah. I mean, you don't have a cocktail and fill it half full of Guinness, do you?
No. But we used to drink what we call poor man's, but apparently poor man's Black Velvet should be called a stout bubble. Now, we never asked for a stout bubble in the mount. We asked for a pint of Black Velvet. And apparently, if you put the cider in first, it's called a Black Adder. Because when you make a Black Velvet poor man's, you're supposed to put the Guinness. The Guinness goes in first and the cider on top. If you do it the other way around, it's called a Black Adder, which I guess is a bit like a snake bite, isn't it? That's why they called it. So the Black Velvet was the beer of our choice when we first went to pubs. And so we just got to tell this little story. I think we mentioned it before, though. But one of our first ever, I think probably our first ever pub outing to London, Bruce, was when Nick played in a brass band and we had a trip down to London, and for whatever reason there was a few spare seats and they needed filling up. So Bruce, you and Simo and me we said, well, we'll just go and have a few drinks then. The prize of the trip was actually to go to watch Master Team. Was it Master Team? I couldn't tell what. Yeah. Angela Rippon had a Saturday night TV's, whatever it was, quiz show. And so the band had managed to somehow had got tickets to go to a live screening. So Nick and you went off there and paddled off with everybody else. Well, Bruce, me and Simo went drinking around the haunts of London on the night where the Brixton riot started. And we were in this very salubrious hotel called the London Park Hotel, which sadly, probably right lightly, no longer exists. So we had a fair shedful around London. I think we ended up somewhere in Knightsbridge. And then we're trying to get back to we were south of London here, Bruce. You know where this place is.
Yeah, Elephant Castle.
Elephant Castle.
North we were next, very close to the Brewery Museum. Yeah.
So we were trying to get back across the river. And I remember getting on a bus and this woman saying to us, where you going, boys? We goes, we got to go there. Oh, no, riots. You're not going to get there tonight. We go, what can we do? So anyway, she said, get off the bus and get on the tube. So we got on the tube. And we managed to get on this tube train, and we just kept hearing all these stations being announced. Right, this train will not now go to this because it's civil disorder. This train will now not go, and we managed to get off at something like Brixton North or somewhere, and that was where the train. They said, right, that's it. You've got the train's going no further. Get out here. So we came out of this underground station, half cut, to see a sky in flames, police cars screaming everywhere, walked down a few dodgy streets to get to this hotel. And then obviously, arrived at this hotel, I not to a round of applause because everybody thought we were caught up in the riots because they'd all been safely back in the hotel. Anyway, we then went to the bar and being typical country gorbies, I think we ordered 3 pints of black velvet, as we did. And it was taking a hell of a long time. And I said, excuse me, why is it taking such a long time? Because you've got bottles of Guinness and bottles of cider. And he said, oh, no, we've got to find some champagne for your black velvets because we don't have champagne here. The champagne will be in the restaurant bar. And at that point, we all went completely white and went, no, we don't want champagne. Cider and Guinness in a pint glass, please. So all I just remember, I think the day after we went to the Barbican, and I just remember being in one of my worst states ever, sat on a coach, just trying to not puke because it was
dreadful.
I remember the chef chasing fried eggs around this massive tubing of just oil, just trying to catch an egg as it flew around. So anyway, so black velvet was my V, and as you can say, they brought some very interesting. I think our aim was to drink 8 Bruce on a Friday night, wasn't it? I've 8 pints of black velvet on a Friday night, mainly in the Mount Hotel in Malton, which we need to revisit. So, Nicholas, your V was a much more proper place and proper visit, was it? Mentioned in a number of podcasts.
Well, it was, but I thought Bruce would have chosen this one. So
you beat me to it, yeah. Fantastic.
Obviously, V had to take a little bit of thinking about, but I got inspiration popped into the Royal Oak a couple of weeks back, and Steve had the Rudgate Viking on. And Rudgate also do another beer called Valkyrie, which is obviously reminds me of the famous march. But then all of a sudden I thought, well, no, V for Victoria, the Victoria pub up in Durham. And we have spoken about before. It is a classic, unsport Victorian pub, Victorian by design, Victorian by nature. I've always mentioned that surprising, it's just tucked around the back of the high security prison. I didn't realise that Durham prison is actually right in the middle of the town, which is really surprising because they normally put these places out in the middle of nowhere in case the psychos that are locked up in there try and escape. So yeah, the Victoria pub. Don't think I need to say any more about it than that, but I was surprised that Bruce hadn't gone for that.
I would have done to it. It's a fantastic pub. It's like a living museum, but well frequented, great staff. And again, one of those, say it's often best visited on a dark winter's evening when all the fires are lit. But it is just a fantastically, perfectly preserved pub. It's a real credit to the people who run it, and you can stay there as well.
Yeah, I've said before, it's not a comfortable pub because it is what I call a utility pub. It's not one where you can sink back into a nice plush banquet seat and sort of be relaxed and casual all night. But yeah, as a classic traditional boozer, it's a great spot to be.
It really is, yeah.
Okay, and that just leaves us Bruce's final and that coldest colours of this one. And again, you're surprised with this one, Bruce. So you've gone for Victoria Bitter, as in infamous VB from Melbourne, Australia.
Well, it is because, I mean, much really talk about Australian beers, that this bizarre regionalisation of Australian bitters, that the sort of the lack of choice that, well, I've not been for 20 years to Australia, but I do remember being absolutely staggered by the lack of choice. For example, went to Sydney, you could drink Tuis, which whilst they have great images, these beer, and the iconic names, the reality of drinking them is often quite disappointing, isn't it? They're quite insipid and quite weak.
Well, it's not beer, is it, Bruce? Really, it's lager.
It is, that's right. But then, of course, when you get to Melbourne, the only game in town really is drinking a Victoria Bitter, which is bitter at all, because like Nick Crowder says, it's a lager, really. Up in Perth, is it Perth or Brisbane, where it's all Castlemaine?
Castlemaine, yeah.
One of them's all Foster's, isn't it, really? And I say, I like Victoria Bitter. It's such a strong, iconic brand, and it's never changed, has it? Through our lifetimes, really. I mean, everywhere you go around Melbourne, there's VB branding, it's just so iconic. But the beer itself, I should say, is quite disappointing. But in terms of image of Australia, the market, I think it's fantastic, really. Yeah, a couple of places now, though, obviously you can buy it over here now. It disappeared for a long time, but it has started popping back up in the supermarkets, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think again, it is a bitter. It's not quite a lager. It is still brewed quite traditional. It's much more traditional beer in Australia than the like the Fosters and stuff. Because you're right, Bruce. In fact, Australians don't drink 4X or Fosters. You can hardly find those beers over there. So VB is very much, and like, as you mentioned, there's a lot. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Victoria. There's a lot of pride in what you drink, and VB is Victoria's beer. So particularly, Aussie rules football, the MCG, obviously cricket in Melbourne. It's VB is what everybody drinks, really, and it is, and of course the Stubby, and I've got a few tales of when I was over there with my Aussie mate, and that's all he drinks. And you'd go to the drive-through. You could go to the drive-through liquor store where you'd go and get 24 stubbies of VB already cold. And when I first went over there, he used to talk about stubby journeys. And I said, what do you mean stubby journeys? He goes, how many beers do you drink on the way? Because obviously in Australia, again, I'm going back like you, 20, 30 years when drink driving maybe were not quite as thing as, and of course Australia, you don't see cars for miles anyway. And literally you'd go and buy either drive-through or you'd go into a supermarket and they'd have all these. When I first went in and we'd go and buy a slab each of VB, and Rob would say, no, don't get them off the shelf, follow me. And there'd be a little room at the back that was a kind of walk-in refrigerator.
Yes, I've seen
so your beer was already cold. He said, no, you don't want to get cold, mate. You need a cold one. So you drink it absolutely ice cold. And a 4 stubby trip was it would 4 bottles of beer. You'd be there. You'd arrive. So it's yeah. Now I got into Carlton. Carlton is another similar Victoria brand, and a couple of the older boys that I drank with over there got me into Carlton Gold, and you can't buy that in the UK. And that was quite a nice, again, a kind of cross between a bitter and a lager, really. But now I was quite amazed that you'd gone for VB. I think I quite like a VB. It's not a bad drink, but you got to drink it cold. Again, was one of the first beers that went over there. Obviously, as he developed as a colony as well. Fantastic.
I went to the Melbourne Cup on that trip, and the Melbourne Cup had 200,000 people popping at Flemington. And what they don't tell you is that by the time everyone's in there, there's not a blade of grass to sit on, and you actually joined a queue for a Victoria beer, like a caravan tent. I was actually in that queue 45 minutes, along with thousands of people, just to come back. And they'd only sell you 1 bottle per person. Oh, it was just madness. So
that's right. I remember going on the train from Sydney to Melbourne, and that same thing. You could buy 3 beers every hour. So I just sent my missus down for three VBs, and then she'd go down and get 3 VBs. So I ended up having 6 VBs. So that was very good. So we've had quite a collection there tonight. We've had the City Hull. We've had a couple of breweries. We've had one very iconic brewery owner. We've had some breweries and a couple of different beers. So we've had Oakham, Citra. We've had Victoria Bitter, Black Velvet as a drink. So quite quite an eclectic range. Right, it's time then, gents. I'm going to pick out the one for the next set of, or the next podcast that we do.
Let me choose first. I've got to go to the pub.
Hang on, then. I'm going to pull them out now. So the first one is letter W. That's the first letter. So I'm in my little bag here. Look, you can see my little bag. The second letter is going to be the letter J. Oh, that's an interesting one.
Oh, that's that different, isn't it?
Jennings. Yeah.
Jersey.
And the third letter for the next time is going to be the letter. Hang on, can't be that one because we've already done V. I thought I'd probably put these in one at a time. Hang on, with it. Right, and the last letter is letter. I'm going to get rid of that one because X is too hard.
I'm claiming John Bull for J. Yes,
right,
I'm claiming the John Bull for J.
G. So G for George is our three letters. So WG or J, well, WG Grace. WJG is going to be our next podcast letters that we will do. So it's Easter coming up. So I know we said that we've got to maybe try and talk about trying to get together possibly. I've also been in touch with Simon Dewhurst, who's one of our regular listeners. And he is Chronicles of Beer is a podcast that he's been involved with There's an A to Z where we took a little bit of the kind of idea about this, and he's keen to come along and maybe do a podcast, maybe about podcasts, but also to give us an idea about his neck of the woods. And again, if anybody else would like to give us a message, maybe give us a little rundown about the beers where you are, pubs, etc., that'd be really good. So we'll carry on with our A to Zs and see how we go. So, gents, I think that's about it for tonight. I thought it was going to be a short one, but it's kind of rattled on a little bit, haven't it?
Yes, time's really beat me.
And Bruce will go to the pub.
Bye, everybody. Thanks ever so much. And we'll go you too. I'll see you later.
See you soon.
Where are you going, Bruce? Fox?
Crystal Palace. Yeah.
Crystal Palace. Sam Smith.
Absolutely. See you later.
See you, Bruce. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. See you later.
See you, Bruce.